All right, good morning. Welcome to lower body flexibility, where we're going to be talking about the big three: front splits, head to toe, and side splits or middle splits. I'm going to give it 5 more minutes for someone to show up if they like. I'm going to pause the recording, and then in 5 minutes, we'll get going. All right, here we go. So, if anyone does join throughout, I will pause to kind of approve them, to recognize the name. Otherwise, we can dive in. Recording, good. So we're going to talk about lower body mobility and flexibility today. I've got a whiteboard that I'm going to use to lay out the event here. Should be half an hour, ideally. So I want to make this presentation and workshop tangible. I want you to take away some stuff from here that you can implement in your practice right away. And when I posted up the poll about what people would be interested in learning more, in general, I knew upper body and lower body flexibility would be a popular vote because everyone needs more. Everyone needs more tangible information that they can implement into a routine. So my goal is for this group to be the one-stop shop that you need. Now, this information is primarily from my years of study and years of trial and error in my practice. This includes studying other certifications. This includes talking with experts. This includes my own self-education and experimentation on my body and routine. So I hope that you find it useful. When we talk about the big three for lower body flexibility, we're talking about front splits, side splits, and head to toe. And I'll talk about what each one of these is. Front split, forward and back split, left and right. Side split is abduction, an extreme pancake, ideally 180 degrees of straddle movement. And then head to toe is a forward fold with straight legs, and we're touching head to toe. Everybody wants to know how frequently to train, right? It's very common to talk to people, get the idea that the experts, the best, they stretch every day. And that may be true for some people, but it may not be true for other people. And most of the time, the majority are going to be learning flexibility as an adult that doesn't have dancing, gymnastics, sport background, or may have some of those things, but may have stopped and then wanted to return to training later in life. So it's really the minority that start as a dancer or have some flexibility attributes that they're able to maintain their whole lives. Those people might stretch every day. But I want you to think of this in the context of your life right now. Do you stretch daily? If so, what do you do? What do you work on? How long is that routine? Or do you have targets? Do you have ways of measuring progress and so on? And if you don't stretch daily, how do you organize your stretching? Do you have any structure at all? Is it just a free-for-all? Is it just what you feel? What are your goals? So the way I've laid out frequency and the way I've found for this to be the most productive long-term is that we have a number of different types of stretching, right? Flexibility work. We have static body weight stretches, static passive. You can have dynamics. You can have generally body weight stretches that are either in motion or out of motion, static. So I classify these as body weight or statics. Those can happen daily, so-called daily. And when I mean daily, I mean 3 to 6 times a week. 3 to 6 times a week. It's not 3 to 6 times a day, 5 days a week. It's 3 to 6 times a week. And each one of those stretches should be Total time under tension, 60 seconds to 2 minutes. Ideally, no more than 2 minutes, because after that, you start to have diminishing return. And there are cases out there where we spend long, long times under tension in a static position to impact fascial change or something with fascia. And I just don't have enough experience in this specific context to really have anything to say about it. I've observed that those cases are out there. Maybe you know something. Let me know if you do. Next, weighted movement. Okay, this is strength building in flexibility. You're missing a huge piece if you think flexibility is all passive. Flexibility is strength through range of motion. Mobility, flexibility, they're all bullshit terms. Think of them as range of motion, and you need the strength to achieve that range of motion. If you don't have the strength, you're very unlikely to achieve the range of motion unless you have that dancer background and you've never even thought of it like strength. But ironically, dancers are the strongest flexible examples out there. They have a full range of motion and they're strong through the entire thing. This is why injuries, well, let me rephrase that. Dancers do get injured, but the greater the active flexibility, the lower the risk of injury. Last but not least is isometric or high intensity flexibility training. Now, the weighted and the iso, we're talking about movement specific. So when I say 1 to 2 times, I'm thinking the movement, the stretch. So 1 to 2 times weighted movement a week, strength building, just like a strength routine. You're not going to go and you're not going to do your 1 rep max in squats every day or your 1 rep max deadlift or bench or dip every day, because that's not progressive overload, or you don't have the ability to super compensate. So we want to apply those same strength building principles to the flexibility picture here with weighted. Now, isometric training is high intensity. It's the greatest force produced at the highest outer ranges. So isometrics or high intensity should happen 1 time a week per movement. 1 time isometric training, side splits per week. 1 time isometric training, front splits per week. 1 time isometric training or ballistic training, head to toe per week. So that's frequency. Now, movement choices are obviously very important here. I want you to think about some things in particular when you select movements. How gravity impacts the movement. What is your orientation in space and what is gravity's role in that movement? Range of motion. Are you selecting a movement that allows you to produce the greatest outside range of motion? And then are you producing the greatest force in that outer range of motion? Next, agonist activation. So agonist muscles are the muscles responsible for the movement. Are you incorporating agonist muscle contractions into your flexibility training? And then lastly, joint stress. So this is one I haven't heard much talk about, but it's becoming very relevant to me, especially as I pursue the full middle split. I have a 180-degree, almost flat, almost square front split. I have nose to toe, no problem. Joint stress, though, in middle splits, specifically around the knees, has become a big part of managing training recovery properly. So I'll share more about this in the examples upcoming, but just think about how you can modify the movement so that your joints don't take unnecessary stress, perhaps causing injury or just causing plateau in your training because you're not transferring the stretch to the correct parts of the body. Okay? So then, last thing here, I want you to come up with an example routine, and I would highly recommend that you write these down for all of the lower body BIG3 movements, an example routine, feel free to message me. You can do so if you have any questions. Now, the one that I've used is side splits. So static would be my warm-up, 2 times 60 seconds in static bodyweight pancake. No problem. And then I have B1 and B2, weighted horse stance, 5 by 5 with a 5-second pause, weighted. So I'm doing a strength approach there. And then right into an isometric 5 by 90-second hold. So you can see this is high volume, and we should train at a 75 RPE, rate of perceived effort, maximum rate of perceived effort. RPE, we do not want to exceed 80 because it's nearly impossible to recover from in the long term, right? We can test, which would be a 10 RPE, a 100% effort, but we're not testing more than once every couple months at most, at best. And then we're going to finish off with some agonist internal rotation, 2 by 10 reps each side. Okay? So I'm not going to run you through the routine. That was just my example. I will post a picture of the whiteboard up at the time that I post the workshop here and share it with anybody. Keep in mind too, this is the stuff we work on in the handstand therapy membership. So the paid membership version of the group you're in is specific programming for hand balance and flexibility, delivered to you on your smartphone. It doesn't get more convenient than that. You don't have to worry about your programming. You get a private members Facebook group with education, accountability, and the community aspect, which helps push you towards the results you want. You're challenged to show up every day, to set appropriate goals, and to train smart, to train intelligent. This stuff is abnormal. Don't be part of the majority that doesn't invest in themselves. All right, let's jump into some tangible stuff here. I have my notebook and I'm going to take you through some example movements for each front split, head to toe, and middle split. All right. So starting with front split, what would the static position be? 2 options. Forward fold, of course. I have my watch. I would always be timing 60 seconds. Okay. Forward fold properly. Let's adjust here. Forward fold properly would be an anterior pelvic tilt, coming down to a floating position here. So I'm maintaining a nice stretch on the hamstrings, and I'm not rounding in the back or pulling forward. Okay. Gravity's acting vertically on me, down. Next option, couch stretch. I'm not going to have a couch, but I'll use a wall. For those who are unfamiliar, this is a hip flexor and quad stretch. I'm getting up against the wall, knee in vertical position, shin in vertical position. My hips are squared. I can mark the greater trochanter on the outside with the hands. Make sure that I'm squared. Engage the glute to go into posterior tilt and push back towards the wall. I want to sit up, ideally butt to heel and then shoulder to wall when I'm very flexible. 60 seconds. Statics. Agonist activation. Okay, what movement is responsible for the front split? Together, we would do glutes and we would do hip flexors. So first, agonist activation would be a pike lift hold. Okay. I might do that for 10 to 30 seconds, depending on the movement. Agonist activation number 2 would be a belly down, knee bent, glute, or hip extension activation. Just like that. So we're learning to extend the hip without twisting at the spine. Weighted. I'm not going to do a weight. I'm just going to hold a 10-pound example. 10-pound plate for an example, we would do a split squat, guys. An ATG style, ass to grass split squat. Long lunge. Hips are squared, not open. I'm going knee far over toe to work on dorsiflexion. I'm up tall. I'm trying to keep that back leg straight and the glute engaged to go into hip extension. And I can shift back even, so I can go as deep into this movement as possible. I would do a 5x5 here. Work up and weight. I'm going to work on protecting the knee while getting into a semi front split position with load. So I'm working on strengthening the range. And last but not least, long lunge. So for those who are unfamiliar with long lunge, this is our isometric training for front split. I would get into the split squat position, shift back, and then I would use something to stabilize, maybe a broomstick, maybe a chair or something just to stabilize with a hand. And then I'm going to lift that back leg straight. I'm going to shift backwards and up onto the heel in the front. So now I have super activation through the front hamstring because I'm driving that heel into the ground through the heel directly. And I'm not transferring horizontal, I'm transferring vertical. That's why I lift the toe. And I have hip extension going on in a squared hip position. Okay, you're choosing a variation of that, an intensity that you can hold for 90 seconds minimum, guys. None of this 10-second, 20-second work window. 90 seconds to 2 minutes if you want a front split. All right, head to toe. Again, static would be forward fold. Agonist would be pike lift hold. Weighted would be Jefferson curls. So I'll use my trusty cooler for the demonstration here. Choose a safe environment, obviously. Don't copy me. With weight in my hand, I'll use, nope. Okay, Jefferson curl. Legs are straight, heels together, or you may have 2 inches between them. Doesn't really matter. We just want to be aware of the hip internal external rotation that's happening. I like to have feet together to start. Hands over the bar, shoulders back. I'm in an upright position, and then I'm going to shift chin to chest first, and I'm going to segmentally flex the spine, keep the legs straight the whole time, thinking about really slowly moving the bar down towards the feet. This one I am rounding my back, and I'm going as low as I can. Holding that position for 5 to 10 seconds. Coming back up in reverse, not in a straight deadlift. Still in spinal flexion. Posterior tilt all the way right up to the top. Back to straight in the starting position. You would want to work that movement up to minimum 50% body weight. So obviously not a stick, but in the long haul, you can work a Jefferson curl up to plus body weight. The more the merrier, because your spine will be stronger and healthier. But this is a strength movement that doesn't happen overnight. Next, we have single leg, straight leg deadlift. Straight leg deadlift. Now, I would like to do this with a yoga block of some kind, lifting the toe or a wedge. In fact, I'll show you a wedge. Homemade tilt board. So I'm going to put a foot up here, something like 30 degrees. Stick on the back, weight on the back. Do this body weight first. 1 foot out to the side, stabilizing, front leg straight, and I'm going into anterior tilt, shifting that butt back, stretch on the hamstring and the front leg, and I'm going to hold this position for 90 seconds, guys. 90 seconds. This is your high intensity isometric training for head to toe. Both sides. Now, ballistic is a different story. Personally, I didn't do any high intensity training for front split. I did weighted movement and I did ballistic. You should be fine with ballistic, but the key is going to be measure your progress. Measure your progress. I cannot stress enough, what you can't measure, you can't master. So, we had some questions around what is head to toe. Head to toe would be straight leg, forward fold, head to toe, nose to toe, okay? So if you're not there, let's say you can get your foot up and then just tilting and you get to here. What are you gonna do to measure your progress, okay? First thing you can do is change the position because gravity is not acting down on you in this position. So I want you to actually do foot on the floor if you're a beginner and you don't have that much range of motion. And we would choose an object, guys. Choose an object. Here's a foam roller, something else, a stick, a broomstick, a yoga block, a parallel, your dog, your cat. Choose an object, put it on the toe. Mark where this is in space, right? I can see it, I can repeat it every time, and I'm aiming nose to block. Ballistic. Let's say you work down to something more, just a yoga block. You're aiming toe to block every time. Maybe you have to stack a fist or two on top of that. Great. Keep going. One fist less. One hand. Just the block sideways. The block horizontal. Then it's two fists. Then it's one fist. Whatever you want to do. Stack hands. Stack one hand plus pinky to toe, pinky to thumb. You get the picture? So adapt it. Have fun with it. Frequency for ballistics should be, well, first of all, you want the bounces to be in a 2 to 5 inch window. So we're not bouncing from this position all the way down, okay? We're in a very controlled window here. The pulses, obviously at the stretched range, we want to spend more time. We want to ramp up the amount of time we're spending in that maximum range of motion window, that one place. So you want to do anything from kind of like 30 pulses per minute, so one every 2 seconds, to something like 60 pulses or maybe even 75 pulses per minute, just a little bit faster than a second, so that with time, you're spending more time in that fully stretched position. You want to ramp that up. Total pulse numbers should be anywhere from 25 to 60. Okay, but we're not going 1,000 reps in that stretched window. So I hope that makes sense. That's ballistic. Now, last but not least is middle splits. So static position would be either pancake, which I'll show you here. Okay, body weight pancake, 60 seconds. I'm at roughly 90 degrees, something like that, whatever stretch is comfortable, but not all the way into abduction. Specifically, I want to make sure I'm up high, chest high, tilting into anterior pelvic tilt, driving those heels into the ground, reaching out, forward fold, 60 seconds. Okay? Kind of adjusting as I go, pulling further into the pancake. Next, we have agonist activations. So we would be doing something like 90-degree open straddle, using the glute min and the glute med to pull into abduction. And definitely not last or least, one of my personal favorites, and I know Emmett Lewis loves this one. Let me show you the easier variation first. So standing tilt, which could start in a hands and knees position. We would just go into straddle, into abduction, keeping that knee in a straight line. Then we might go open leg. Then we would go into a standing. Personally, I find standing a little bit easier. You can also bend the knee in standing. So I would do something, usually a chair, which puts me on this tilt. But for example's sake, bent knee first, tilt. Then we're going straight leg, tilt. Okay, so standing tilt is a great way to work on your agonist activations. Next, weighted. Weighted is two options. We have weighted horse stance, which I would do in either your 3 or 5 step horse stance. Heels out, toes out, boom. Heels out, toes out, flat. Good. And then weighted good mornings. You could do either seated or straight leg. Personally, I think seated is a more beginner-friendly movement. So I would have the weight on the back here. I'm in a straddle position. Feet, give or take 45-degree angle. Weight on the back. We might go into the full straddle position, pulling into straddle abduction, tilting the hips forward. Going into that good morning, as much as I can maintain a straight back. So if I start to round here, we know I need to work on that hip tilt and then spend more time at that tilted position. You could also do a seated on the ground. So in the pancake position, this one requires that you have pretty good mobility already. Feet back, straight knees to protect the knees, flex those quads. Front position, tall chest, anterior tilt. 5 by 5 reps. Okay? And last but not least is your isometric training. So to enter into side split, again, 90 seconds here, guys. I'm going to go into a horse stance-like position, and then I'm going to keep that pelvic tilt so that the pelvis is anteriorly rotated and I don't have any femoral impingement with the parts of the pelvis that might block if we were in a neutral position, in a tall hip position like this, standing upright, pelvis tilted forward into my side split position here, and then I can shift weight up and maintain, but I'm not up tall. I still have an anterior tilt sticking the butt out, and I got 90 seconds on the clock here. Okay, One thing you're going to want to experiment with in the isometric training is the floor texture and your socks or bare feet or shoes and so on, because you want it to be, again, 75% intensity for the majority of the work, 75% effort. So if you cannot control that outward sliding motion pretty easily, you're going to be in trouble. You won't be able to get productive work done, so you should change the texture to something you can control. All right, so that's 37 minutes. I'm going to stop there. That is my lower body big 3 presentation. This is not the whole picture, guys. Just because I gave you the movements doesn't mean that you're going to have front split, middle split, and head to toe next week. This requires a lot of work, a lot of accountability, a lot of form feedback. So again, I cannot stress it enough. Just find yourself a tribe, the handstand therapy membership, somewhere else with a great coach. Doesn't really matter to me. Don't free float too much. Get yourself some guidance. Get into a group that you enjoy, that the community's good, they hold you accountable, where you train intelligent. If you're in a group that's doing 60-second passive stretches, 5 times a day, or that's all you're stretching in total, I think maybe you need to reconsider what you're doing, or just how well the type of flexibility training you're doing really aligns with the goals you say you want. All right, guys, thank you for joining. This has been the lower body big 3. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one.